Welcome back to another Just 5 Mins. Yeah, this one's been hanging around on my to-do queue for quite some time, actually. I keep forgetting to break it open and actually get it recorded. So what is it? It's DAB, D-A-B, or Data API Builder. Okay. I first came across it, I think it must be at least a year ago, back in 2023, in beta. I think it's now, at the time of this recording, in general release. So I'll put the links below. You can check all this out anyway. But what the heck is it? Well, it's essentially, it can replace or at least augment APIs for your database, doing things like CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. So it doesn't expose your database. That's the key thing. It generates the APIs along with some decent sort of security, which I'll get to. It is a Microsoft thing, but it is free and open source. But it doesn't just support things like Microsoft SQL. It supports things like Azure SQL and all that sort of stuff. But it also supports PostgresQL. MySQL at the moment. It might also support other things down the track as well, but it also supports things like your noSQL sort of databases, things like Cosmos DB. Okay. And of course, it's got, like I mentioned, Azure database for MySQL as well. So you can have your own MySQL or the Azure hosted version. And also it's got Azure SQL Data Warehouse type stuff as well. So I'm guessing that's going to increase with time, that list. Okay, but basically it exposes your data, but it does it in two ways, which is really cool, I think. It's got REST endpoints, which is basically it's run by a CLI, a command line. Okay, so you can run this as a command line on just your local machine. It does come as a container as well, if you want to run it in a container, and it can certainly talk to things in containers. So if I've got Microsoft SQL in Docker containers, and I've got MySQL as a Docker container, and I've got an Azure SQL database as well, and if I had the money I might even have a Cosmos DB database. But either way, you can talk to those endpoints whether they're on premise or if they're in the cloud, in containers. It works with all of that Kubernetes services and even down to Azure static web apps as well. But anyway, the point being is it produces a native open API, Swagger REST endpoint. Okay, that's on the REST side. So it's an open API spec to start with. That's the standard. It's got a nice, lovely Swagger based interface, so you can actually test and do all those lovely stuffs. But it's also got GraphQL. Okay, and excuse me, and basically if you haven't used this, I'll have to do a JFM on this. I think I did one a long time ago, but there's a couple of open source projects called Banana Cake Pop for GraphQL that basically, I suppose, is a bit like Swagger. So if you've ever seen Swagger to do like test your REST endpoints, it's got that nice little web page, hasn't it? You can do that. The Banana Cake Pop for GraphQL, great names, essentially does the similar thing. So you can test a GraphQL endpoint. So it can do both of them or one of each. You can have also multiple backends as well. So you can have one going to like, PostgresQL, one going to a NoSQL database, and it'll generate all that infrastructure for you. The REST side, the endpoints support in-memory caching and things like the OData like query string keywords and things like that. And a GraphQL, of course, is, well, GraphQL, and it does support things like mutations and all of that. I'm running out of time as usual, but the point being is that this thing actually generates that. It doesn't, like I say, it doesn't expose the whole database. It literally builds the APIs that you can hook into in a I think, a really decent way. And the security, so for instance, it's got, I'll just have a quick look. I think it's down here. I'm just doing a quick look. But it's basically got, role-based authorization. It ties in with things like Microsoft Entra identity. It's got JWT Auth 2 that it can actually support as well. So you can have row-based security. So the security side, you essentially, when you build this thing, it generates a JSON that actually is sort of like the configuration to say what you're exposing. So you can choose also what to expose. You can have things like even like dynamic schemas and things like that for GraphQL. But the point being is if you've got 100 tables, but you only want to export 20 of them, then you can do that. And it does all sorts of lovely stuff. So it's certainly something I'm going to be having a look at now it's in general release. And I'll put the links below. But that's what I've got for this time around. So take care, enjoy, and we'll catch you on the next one.